Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. We're keeping it real, goes right. We hope you're having a wonderful time, wonderful week. Hope you've had a great week. Sorry about that really bad intro. We're back, Real Take Sports Talk 28. I'm here with Andrew Hohenstein. Andrew, how you doing, my friend? Oh, wait. Technical difficulties. It be like that. It be like that. Hopefully they can hear you now. I hope so. Let's see. Anyway, but we have a great show planned for you. We're going to be talking a lot of things in sports. We're going to be talking NFC and AFC Championship breakdown. Nobody got into the Baseball Hall of Fame. That's going to be a topic as well. NBA news, Shaq and Donovan Mitchell going at it, as well as much more news from the NFL. So before we start, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. Now, Andrew, let's start off talking about a huge development, a big development in the world of the NFL. Now, we know that NFL quarterback Deshaun Watson, Houston Texans quarterback Deshaun Watson has officially asked for his trade from the organization after having a back and forth with owner Bob McGuire. Watson signed a 4-year, $177 million deal before the season. There's been a lot of talk that he does not like the way the organization structure is working, and a lot of people agree with him. And they are also saying that this is going to be the first type of NBA type of move to try to get him out of the city. So, Andrew, how did this happen? What has led up to this point to make Deshaun Watson want to leave?
Well, old Billy Boy, I don't know if you remember old Billy Boy they used to have down there in Houston. Old Billy Boy basically took the entire team that was built and, got rid of them all with the exception of J.J. Watt. He was the first one there. They got rid of Clowney. Clowney's gone. The dude with braids, he's in Arizona. So he pretty much got rid of whatever Watson, could have had. And then guy goes, gets fired, has the fallout with Watt. And, they had it. Who was it? Was it Watt? Watt apologized to Mr. Watson when the season ended, saying that they wasted a year of his career. And though I have not been the biggest Deshaun Watson fan for obvious reasons, I do agree. I hate to see any player's career, like a season in their career, get wasted. And he did. This was a wasted season in his career. This was a team that was in the playoffs last year. Remember, this was a team that had a 20-something point lead on the then-to-be Super Bowl champions, Kansas City Chiefs. So, this was a team that, they were built for success. And then old Billy Boy tore it all down. And, Watson everyone was like a domino. And I think Watson's the next domino to fall. It'll be interesting to see where he ends up, though. I'm definitely going to keep an eye on that one.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But this is just an entire bungling of this situation, of the organization, of everything by the owner. McNair has run this organization, this franchise, into the ground. Because, think about what they had. They had a very good defense. You had Jadeveon Clowney, who was, productive when he was there. J.J. Watt, who was also productive when he was there. A very solid defense. And you go on the offensive side, you had Lamar Miller, who was doing well at running back. You had DeAndre Hopkins. You had Kyler Fuller. You had all of these guys who gelled together, who were a team. We thought that the Texans were going to be one of those teams who's going to be in it year in, year out for the next 10 years. And to see how far they've come in just one season after they and you're right. The biggest domino that fell was Billy Boy, Bill O'Brien trading away the star player on that team, the best player on that team in DeAndre Hopkins, because he's the glue that held this team together. Whether they went 9-7, 8-8, they were in the playoffs, and a lot of it was due to Hopkins. So you can't say that it was, this is Deshaun Watson being selfish, because there are people out there who are saying, he's being selfish, he needs to just man up and lead the team. There's nothing left to lead. They gave him the entire city. They gave him everything, and he gave everything back as well. He's paying for people's Thanksgivings. He's paying for people's electricity bills. He's given so much to this city. And then they took everything away from him, Andrew. They took it away, and then they left him with nothing. They went 4-12 this year. He's expected to just sit out now. He doesn't care. He's pulling a full Carson Palmer. People forget that Carson Palmer back in I believe 2010 did this with the Bungles, and he got his way. Eventually, he waited out until like halfway through the season, but he got traded. And prepare for Deshaun Watson to do the same thing because, and Stephen A. Smith actually alluded to this in First Take I think today. He alluded to the fact that this might go a little deeper than just, bad decisions on the football field because, they brought in David Cooley, who is former Baltimore Ravens coach, and he actually has a bit of a rapport with Watson, but that doesn't matter to Watson, apparently. That doesn't matter. The GM move doesn't matter. I think at the end of the day, this has to do with the owner, McNair. This has to do with the way that he has lied to Watson because originally what happened, Andrew, they said, all right, we're going to let you know about the decisions we make, about GM, about all that staff and stuff. We're going to let you know. You're going to be in there. And when you don't tell him about it and when you don't involve him in those conversations, after you've told him that you're going to involve him, that's just shady. And after everything that they've done to him over the past year, how is he expected to trust them with his future? They're trading away pieces left and right. They're losing pieces left and right. I remember, I think it was it Kiki Cutie who got suspended for the rest of the year or something? Or they're losing pieces. It's not a functional team, and this team has come such a far way. It's so sad. Now,
and it's not even just real quick, and it's not even too they could pitch to him, even though we traded pieces, this draft class, the draft class after is loaded and everything like that. It doesn't matter. They have no draft picks, so they have no cap room.
Miami owns all their draft picks.
Exactly. They have no cap room. They have no draft picks. So it's what's his incentive to stay? It's like this team, there's no way in hell they can really get any better. So his incentive is I'm still young. He has all that money that I think a lot of it's guaranteed. So if that money's going to be guaranteed and he's like, listen, these are the best years that I can give to the NFL, whatever team I'm on, he wants to maximize that. So I don't blame him one bit.
No
I'm
one
not the biggest Deshaun Watson fan.
Yeah.
His team is obviously his team is a roadblock to my team in the AFC South. So, we get him out of there,
You're a fan of that.
Really have much,
You're a fan
of
that.
He really doesn't. We get him out of there. But you look at the landscape of that division though, dude. It's like, you have Tennessee. Tennessee looks like they could be, barring they're the Titans. So the Titans are anything's possible. So, but barring a disaster, Indy's a well-run organization, and you got the number one pick going down to Jacksonville, and they have a bunch of picks too. So, plus a shit ton of cap room. So, they could be back in it, if not this season, the season after. And Houston has no direction right now. So I don't blame him for wanting out. It's a no-win situation for him if he stays.
Exactly. Now the biggest thing, I think the biggest question people have are, where do we think he's gonna go? Because there's a lot of talk that the Jets might be interested because they have a lot of draft capital. The Jaguars, like you mentioned, are a potential landing spot, but I don't know if they do that within the division. That sounds insane to me. Unless
AFC South teams
they don't do
business with each other.
Hear me out on this. There is one scenario where I think he could potentially go to Jacksonville, and it would involve that number one pick. They would have to give up that number one pick, and it would essentially be a straight swap for Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson. And that would be blockbuster. And if you're the Texans, right, and you're offered something like that, if you're offered Trevor Lawrence for Deshaun Watson, I think that's a bit of a no-brainer. But then the question becomes, is that all you're getting in the trade, and is that worth it when you can probably get three draft picks within the first 34 picks with the Jets, or this very similar offer from Miami, and you can get Tua Tagovailoa in exchange for that. But then the question becomes, is Tua your guy? Would you be cool with sticking with Sam Darnold if he's a part of that trade? There's a lot of moving parts to it, and I do think at the end of the day, it's going to be the Jets. I think the Jets are probably the favorite, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that they have a lot of draft capital. And that number 2 pick is going to be looking very nice. And for a team that doesn't have a lot of picks in the years moving forward, if you're the Houston Texans, that number 2 pick you could use actually to trade down and get more picks, because Justin Fields is still a quarterback that's going to have a market at number 2. People are going to trade up to get him. So I think if you have that in your back pocket if you're the Houston Texans, that's worth more. And like if you want to have Sam Darnold as part of the deal, you can have that. If you want to draft another person like Trey Lance, you can do that as well. I think that gives you the most flexibility is staying with the Jets. And for Deshaun Watson, I think that's one of his big landing spots that he wants to go to. I think he wants to go to New York, and he's made it known through his surrogates and whatever. So I think that's going to be something to watch. I think that's the landing spot right now. Of course, it could change throughout the next few months, but I think that's where he's going to go.
I don't see it as much that way, only because I think about first with Jacksonville, Urban Meyer just took the job there, even though Shad Khan, I know this more than anybody, AFC South teams really don't do business with each other. That's just not, it really has never been a thing. It's not a thing, especially for big name players like that. Urban Meyer just got there. The first thing is not going to be, we're going to trade away because they have all that cap room too. I don't think they're going to take on that big ass contract with that cap room and trade away. Remember, the thing with that number one pick is even though it's guaranteed money, that salary that they're going to pay him for a talent that they're getting there's a reason the number one pick is so coveted, is that you're essentially getting a very talented player for pennies on the dollar.
Right.
So I don't see Shad Khan making that move. With the Jets could be a viable option. I don't necessarily see it, though, only because I think Sam Darnold could potentially be the guy. I think the Jets' move is going to be they're going to retain that pick if they don't trade down. I think instead of them trading the pick or drafting a quarterback, they draft the wideout Devontae Smith out of Alabama to at least give Sam Darnold something. You know what I'm saying? It's at least you give Sam Darnold something to work with, and you also show Sam Darnold, we're committed to you, we still believe in you and everything like that, and you build the team around those two. Here's one that doesn't get talked about, and you know what? I don't see Jared Goff. Could we potentially see Deshaun Watson go out west?
That's an interesting scenario. I don't think that that's going to be likely. One, because the Rams don't really have the draft capital to make that go down unless they were willing to give up 5 first-rounders in next 5 years. I don't think that's gonna happen. Plus, their picks are later, and you know what? You're gonna make Jared Goff part of the trade. Is Jared Goff at that salary he's getting paid? He's one of the highest paid quarterbacks in football right now. Is that worth it for the Texans to take on another big salary when you can get a Trey Lance or that kid Wilson from BYU or whoever, right?
Even Mac
Jones from Alabama, an Alabama quarterback that actually might have some talent. I mean, there's been a string of them lately, actually, but regardless, I don't think that, because there's also a lot of talk about John Wolford, who's in I was about to say St. Louis, who's in LA right now with the Rams. There's a lot of talk about him, and there's a potential quarterback controversy brewing. There's reports that Sean McVay actually prefers to run Wolford in the offense because he has more mobility. He believes his decision-making is better and more consistent than Jared Goff. And I think he has a point. Wolford did very well at the end of the season last year. So, I mean, look, the trade would make sense if you're the Rams. It just doesn't make much sense if you're the Texans, because are you going to get a better offer from someone else? Probably yes. And at the end of the day, I'm not saying Deshaun Watson wouldn't want to go to LA, but he has a no trade clause as well. He can defer anything, and New York, Miami are two of his top destinations. So if he didn't list LA, I think that's either because maybe he doesn't want to go there, or maybe he doesn't have any. He doesn't see the potential of him going there. Maybe he just doesn't think that's a realistic possibility. So I don't think the Rams are one. Keep an eye on one. This is an interesting one, too. Keep an eye on the San Francisco 49ers, because I think that's a team that, are you sold that Jimmy G's your guy? Are you sold that he's going to be the guy to lead you back to a Super Bowl after, a very lukewarm Super Bowl run on his part? He was good. He wasn't great, though. He wasn't the reason they were in the Super Bowl. And also, the next season, he got injured. And what happened the year before they went to the Super Bowl, Andrew? He got injured. And the year before that, when they first traded for him, he got injured. The dude has an injury history. Even went to the Patriots, dude got injured.
Remember, we know who Jacoby Brissett is because Jacoby Brissett was his backup.
Jacoby Brissett is collecting that paycheck from the Indianapolis Colts because of Jimmy G's tendency to get injured. And and we saw what that offense was like without their starting quarterback. It was not the same because, Jimmy G, at the end of the day, he's a very good quarterback, like very good managing the game, and they feed off that play action, that run game. So Deshaun Watson, I think, could come in that offense and fit automatically. They have a decent receiving core, great running attack, and Kyle Juszczyk, the fullback, doesn't get talked about a lot. He's one of the best, most underrated players in football. He would be a great piece, I think, for Deshaun Watson to kind of add that element into the offense. And that defense is just stout, and especially when you got Nick Bosa and all of them coming back, the defense is going to be stout. So I think that could be a potential landing spot. Be on the lookout for that. They also have a higher draft pick this year than they normally would, so because of the bad season they had. And, people don't talk about it, but, at the end of the day, their coach has only had one good run in his years there. He's only had one good year. And, a lot of it is due to injury, but at the same time, is that acceptable for Ted York, the owner? Is that what he wants to do? Is that the type of thing, like, at what point are the excuses for the San Francisco 49ers going to run out? And remember, Deshaun Watson, 33 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, led the league in passing, 112 passer rating, 70% completion percentage. Starting to sound like that. Mel Kiper Jr., he was amazing this year. So I think that there's going to be a bigger market for him than people think. And it's going to come down at the end of the day, two things. What are the Texans going to want for him, and what are they going to, like, what at the end of the day, what are they going to, like, accept for him? And two, where does Deshaun Watson want to go, and where doesn't he? Last thing I want to actually talk about on this issue specifically, what are the long-term implications for this? Because we know that in the NBA especially, we see stars, forcing their way out of places on the daily, it seems like. Harden just did it. Anthony Davis did it last year.
Even Porzingis, dude. I remember Porzingis forces hours after he asked for a trade, got traded.
There are conflicting reports to this day about what actually went down in that meeting. But again, Porzingis, you could put him right in there. Carson Palmer, I mentioned him earlier. He was kind of the first one that I remember that did this. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about, is Deshaun Watson justified in doing this? Is this good for the NFL long term? And, I've come to the conclusion that the NFL is different than the NBA. And here's why. One, in the NFL, I do think that, these, like, landing spots, like these, like wonderful destinations, like Miami, no one's just gonna go to Miami just to go to Miami. Like, no one big who wants to win is gonna go to Miami just to go to Miami. And you can't really. It's harder to put together a super team like that because there's so many moving parts to a team. At the end of the day, if let's say Cleveland, if they have the core already and you're a star player and they have cap room, you're going to want to go to Cleveland maybe. That's going to be up there, rather than the New York Jets right now, who are terrible and they stink in a big market. So I think there's a lot more room in the NFL for that. The question is, at what point does it start to erode away at that? And at what point do we start seeing, players like Deshaun Watson, who just signed a new deal, and start trading themselves and saying, hey, I want out. I don't care. I'm not going to play. I want out.
I don't think it's too much of an issue because, like you said before, it's a lot harder for players in the NFL to kind of get together and build super teams because theoretically, the difference between the NFL and the NBA is there's only 5 guys on the court as opposed to 11 guys on the field, offense and defense. So it's a lot harder for guys in the NFL to just get together and be like, yeah, we're all going to get together in Miami or we're all going to get together in LA. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a lot easier in the NBA for one superstar to get together with 2 of his friends and just be like, yeah, we're going to go to Miami and we're going to make a super team and everything like that. It's so much easier. I think in the NFL too, players don't necessarily care about where they are. They want to be in a winning situation because they realize they have a shorter shelf life than players in other sports, especially, guys would rather they don't care whether they're playing in a cold weather environment, whether it's in a warm weather environment. If they're in a winning situation, Guys would rather be in a winning situation in cold ass Green Bay or cold ass New England
Facts.
than losing games in Miami or losing games in Jacksonville. They would much rather be in that situation. So I think from that perspective, the NFL is different. With Watson, this is just him exercising a lot of the power to the player or something like that, where this is a player realizing, I'm in my prime. These are the best years I'll be able to give. I don't know how much longer I'll be able to give this kind of effort. He doesn't want to go out like a Laurinaitis, or he doesn't want to go out like a Tony Romo. He doesn't want to go out as a guy where, made the playoffs a couple times, never really did anything. And then there were years where he missed the playoffs or something like that too. He doesn't want to go out as one of those players who was really good, but we wonder what could have been. He wants to put himself in a situation to, win Super Bowls, get to AFC or NFC championships, depending on what division or league he's in, and, cement his name. He wants to give himself a chance. I don't blame him one bit.
And neither do I. I think this situation also too just lends itself, like, it's obvious why he wants out. Anyone in this situation would want out. And I think Houston, they're gonna have to do a lot of soul searching this offseason to find out, who their guy moving forward is, because it's damn sure not gonna be Deshaun Watson. But in that soul searching, I think one name that you and I have been focusing on a lot for the past few weeks might come to mind. And his name is Gardner Flint Minshew II. Let's talk about it. The Minshew moment of this week. Gardner Minshew. The Jags have the number 1 pick. They're obviously going to pick Trevor Lawrence. We've talked about this ad nauseum. Andrew, we mentioned this as a potential landing spot only because the Texans might need a quarterback, and they might not be sold on one of these guys they're going to potentially get in the draft. So what do you think the possibility is for Minshew to actually go in the division to Houston?
It's slim to none. Actually, from what I've been doing, a lot of the thinking that I've been doing recently, I don't know the numbers specifically, how much Minshew's getting paid. I don't think Minshew's getting paid that much. I wouldn't be surprised one bit if Jacksonville decides he's on a rookie deal. I wouldn't be surprised one bit if Jacksonville decides to retain Minshew. Honestly, Minshew and have him. He knows he doesn't really know Urban Meyer's offense that Urban Meyer's going to be bringing in, but I wouldn't be surprised one bit if he stays put as their backup. Because let's be honest, we've seen him as a starter. He's not a bad starter. He'd be a damn good backup. He would probably be one of the better backups, if not the best backup in the entire league.
37 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. He's better than some starters in the NFL, and this is in 20 games. So I don't want to hear people saying, "Oh well, it's padding the stats," and oh, it's garbage time, schmarbage time. Gardner Minshew is a budding star in this league, and nobody sees it. I promise you, if he gets the chance to start anywhere next year, he's gonna prove that he is here to stay. Now, when it comes to the Texans specifically, it's a long shot. Honestly, it's a long shot for him to actually get there, because he, just on the face of it, Jacksonville would have to actually want to trade him to Houston. And that's assuming that they want to trade him, like you said. But if they did want to trade him and Houston was the only potential landing spot, I could see that Shad Khan and Tony Khan making that move, because they like to get their draft picks. If they think that they can get a third rounder or something better or something around that, like third, fourth rounder for a Gardner Minshew, and they see a guy in that draft that they might target around there, I think they would make that trade. I think that they're very strategic in that way. So that's a possibility, but it would only be, on the Texans' part, it would only be possible if they were to think that none of these quarterbacks, one, they don't have a shot at them, two, none of them are good enough or worth a first-round pick. And if I'm Houston and I see Trey Lance there, let's say they're picking at the Jets' 24th overall pick, I believe is what they possess as well. Mm-hmm. If I'm there and I see Trey Lance still on the board, I'm taking him. It's just not even like a question in my mind, because I lost Deshaun Watson. I have to replace him, and for me, Trey Lance is a guy. But if they don't like Trey Lance, I think Gardner Minshew is someone you can get for a cheaper than a first round pick. Obviously, you probably get a third or fourth rounder and get him. But it just comes down to what they want to do. I think that my thing is I want him to go to Chicago. That's where I think Minshew would fit the best. I think Gardner Minshew in Chicago would be the best fit. Jacksonville would be more incentivized to trade him there because he'd be out of the division, out of the entire conference. And I think Chicago, they're looking for a cheaper option than Mitch Trubisky because I promise you, Minshew's going to give you at the very bare minimum, he's going to give you the same production Trubisky gave at a much, much cheaper price because you don't want to pay Mitch Trubisky like starting quarterback money. That's insane. So I think Chicago is the bigger landing spot for him at this point. But we'll see. We'll see. You know, Minshew has had a very interesting ride, and people haven't taken notice of him. We're giving him the shine on this podcast because we genuinely believe in his ability to be a starter, and we want to give him a little bit of shine going into this offseason. And we'll have some videos about him specifically coming up on the channel. So be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that like button. Also, hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. Moving on, Andrew, there was a lot of talk in the NBA circles this week about whether or not Jazz superstar Donovan Mitchell is a top level player. Now, obviously, they had a back and forth with they had a back and forth on NBA on TNT, and Shaq said he would be the third or fourth option on a championship team. And I think Donovan Mitchell definitely took exception to that because he heard about it. And let's actually take a look at the exchange between Shaq and Donovan Mitchell going into that. Okay, so that was Donovan Mitchell being essentially told that, you know, he's not there yet. And I think it's a fair argument to make that he's not there, but for Shaq to say that he might be the third option on the team, I think that's he's capping just a little bit because look at what the Jazz are doing right now. 14-4. Mitchell's having a very good season. He's like doing well. He's got 23 points per game, almost 5 assists, 5 or 4.5 rebounds. Like he's doing his job, and I think part of the reason there's this kind of, you know, I guess I don't want to say bias, but it really is a bit of a bias, you know, is because like he plays in that market. He plays in that market, and he plays in and people tend to not focus too much on that. But Andrew, what do you think about Shaq's comments and that little back and forth they had?
I mean, personally, I'm not going to sit here and try to incite something, but I don't disagree with Shaq. Donovan Mitchell's still a very young player. He's still, obviously, I don't think he's hit his prime yet. He might be 23 or 24 years old. He's not in his prime yet. And listen, in order to get to that level, you have to keep putting the work in, and you got to show us. Like, you got to actually take your team there. Now, I know Donovan Mitchell has been in the years let me finish.
Go ahead.
Someone like Shaq saying that, you know, this guy is might be a third option on a championship team today. That's not saying he can't get to a first option on a championship level team, but he's got to keep working and he's got to keep doing it. You got to understand, dude, if there's anyone who knows about being a first or even a second option on a championship team, it's Shaquille O'Neal. Like, even when Shaq was young Shaq in Orlando, Shaq was 22 years old when it was him and Penny Hardaway. You know, he was the 1B, if you want to say, at 22 years old on a team that went to the NBA Finals in 1995 or something like that against the Rockets. And then again, when he became Prime Shaq and they ran it back all those years with the Lakers and everything like that, he was the 1A or 1B, whichever you want to say it. So if there's anyone who knows a thing or two about getting to championships and leading a team to a championship, whether it's being a first option, second option, or a 1A, 1B, it's Shaq. I don't think it was meant to be disrespectful, but I do think in today's game, players, I'm not going to say Donovan Mitchell's sensitive, but it seems like certain players, especially these younger players, you kind of got to challenge them, and the older guys have to challenge them and more or less, you know, force them to get to a level that these guys probably think they can get to, but don't actually get themselves to without that added motivation. Right. That's how I view it.
And I don't think it really has. I don't think it's sensitive is the right word. I think it just might be I think you're right about that. The aspect that they're not as, I guess, challenged. Because I think they're just as driven as years past. I think they're driven in different ways, though. And, you know, and Christian Sands, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Christian just asked in the chat, do you think Donovan Mitchell wins a chip with the Jazz? And his follow-up was, do you think the Jazz need another superstar? And I think those questions kind of go hand in hand with what we're talking about. At the end of the day, is Donovan Mitchell going to be the guy who, delivers a championship to Utah? He could be, but I don't think this core is ready to win a championship, especially with LeBron in the West. I think that's with Donovan Mitchell, reaching his full potential. He could be going like Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan Donovan Mitchell out there, and I think he would still need help because that's just the NBA. That's just what the NBA is. Winning it by yourself is extremely difficult, and it's been getting exceedingly difficult every single year, to the point where I think the last person we can honestly say led a team by themselves, or like in the last maybe 10 years or whatever, is Dirk Nowitzki in Dallas. Because really, who did he have on that team? He had aging Jason Terry, an aging Jason Kidd, JJ Barea, who's not really that much help. Like, essentially, it had to be him on in most games. So, I think it's hard to do. Can Donovan do it? Maybe, if he gets a lot better, but I just don't see it in today's game.
It is tough too, because Donovan Mitchell, even though it is a guard-driven lead, especially they're out west, you got to understand, Sacramento is on the come up. Sacramento already had their guard of the future, and
Sacramento's been on the come up for 10 years.
Yeah, I know. Sacramento already has their guard of the future, and then they got this kid, what's his name, Halliburton or something like that they drafted. So
Halliburton's good. He's really
probably
good.
Leading candidate for Rookie of the Year, and that's with De'Aaron Fox. They already have Buddy Hield, so you got that team is on the come up.
Buddy Hield?
This is a team that
they're like the anti-Knicks.
Dude, this is
you guys
a team,
are all power forwards. They're all guards.
This is a team that went 7 games and lost 7 games to Denver. Now, mind you, Denver's another one. Denver's very good. Devin Booker. Devin Booker is finally has something over there in Phoenix. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But with Utah, I don't think Utah wins a championship. To answer the question, I don't think Utah wins a championship with Donovan Mitchell. If so, they're gonna need a lot of help, and they're gonna need, obviously any team that adds a Kevin Durant type player, but they're gonna need a player like that. Like, they're gonna have to build the way the Warriors were able to build that core with the 2 shooters and then the defensive guys all around them and everything. Like, they're gonna have to build. They have a team that's kind of built like that, just not. They don't have the talent.
Yeah, go ahead.
Another thing too. There's another thing too, that when it comes to Utah, Shaq has not really a vendetta with Utah, but I don't know if you remember Shaq's comments about Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, I remember
when Rudy Gobert signed the big contract, and he was basically just like, all right, kids out there, so all you have to do is average 12 points and you can sign a max contract. So I don't think it was necessarily meant to throw shade at Donovan Mitchell, but I also think Shaq kind of has a little bit of a vendetta because traditional big men are not what they used to be. We don't have the David Robinsons, the Hakeem Olajuwons, the Shaqs. We don't have guys like that anymore. And for him to see a guy that doesn't really do nearly as much. Now, he does play his role on that team very well, but he's not Shaq.
Yeah.
So I think,
yeah. I mean, if you were to ask me, is the second guy on that championship team there right now? I would say no.
No, absolutely not.
They Rudy Gobert and Mike Conley are not going to get it done. Donovan Mitchell needs someone else. He needs someone he needs either a Batman to his Robin or a Robin to his Batman, because right now that core is not winning in the West, especially when you have teams like the Lakers dominating right now. You have a dormant giant potentially brewing with the Warriors. You have the Suns still in it. You have the Mavericks, who Luka's only going to get better, and the Mavericks are very good. Managed. They're a very good, well managed team. They're a very well coached team. That team is only going to get better
too.
Got Portland, healthy, who's always going to be out there.
When Portland's healthy, dude, that is the team you always got a healthy Portland is one of the most dangerous teams. Like, nobody wants to play a healthy Portland.
Like, at some point it becomes okay, how are you going to beat these teams? Denver's still there. Denver, I argue, is probably the second best team in the entire conference. And when if you look at it from who's going to be competing for a championship, we know it's not the other team in LA that I will not name. But it's I think it's going to be interesting. They're going to have to trade for someone. They're going to have to get someone if they want to win a championship soon. I don't see them winning with Rudy Gobert and Mike Conley. It's just not going to happen. Yeah.
See,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that pretty much answers it. Again, guys, if you haven't already, remember to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell as we move on to our next topic. So, as we saw this past weekend in the NFL, there were two, count them, two championship games, the AFC Championship game and the NFC Championship game. Let's talk about the NFC Championship game. Let's talk about the Packers. So the Packers were down by 8 with just over 2 minutes to go in the game. They were right at the goal line. Aaron Rodgers could have ran it in on third down. He chose not to, and instead, what ended up happening was they ended up kicking the field goal, which made it a one-score game. And we'll talk about whether or not that was the right decision in a minute. But after the game, there was a lot of talk about Aaron Rodgers and his future. Tampa Bay is obviously going to the Super Bowl. Forgot to mention that. Congratulations, Tom. But there was a lot of talk about Aaron Rodgers and his future. And when he was asked, he said, his future's a beautiful mystery. He said that, he doesn't know what's going to happen. No one really knows, because in the business of football, your future isn't guaranteed. And we know that. We've seen it multiple times, whether it was Alex Smith in San Francisco, or I'm going to say it again, Alex Smith in Kansas City, because he's the most recent example, or you can point to other examples as well. Deshaun Watson, for different reasons, is another example. A quarterback moving on. These things happen. Andrew Luck. The business moves fast. So
who was the dude that retired at halftime of the game? The Bills?
Oh, it was that was Vontae Davis. Davis. Oh, Shady, I can't do it no more, Shady. Shady, I'm done. But yeah, so Vontae Davis did that too. But yeah, so essentially that's what he was trying to convey. A lot of people took it like, this might be his last season, and I'm gonna lead off with that question. Is this Aaron Rodgers' last season or was this Aaron Rodgers' last season in Green Bay?
I don't know if it was his last season in Green Bay. It's definitely not his last season in the NFL. A lot is going to happen. Like, remember, this is one of those weird ass times. Like, I don't know if we have as many, like, look at this quarterback class, like quarterbacks that will be on the move, quarterbacks that are projecting to be on the move, quarterbacks coming in. I don't think so. I don't think he played his last game in Green Bay. I think he's ultimately going to be back in Green Bay next year. I think what happened in that NFC Championship game was they relied too much. This is why I hate analytics, dude. Analytics will say, get the points, take the field goal, let your defense stop, let your defense, do what they do and everything like that. Come back, you get the ball back, come back and win. And we've seen it, dude. We've seen you've gone on this show and you have blasted my coach of Vrabel in Tennessee for being conservative and punting or kicking field goals as opposed to just going for it on fourth down or So I think some coaches take the analytical aspect and, it's the playoffs, dude, though. In the playoffs, you got to go for it. I think LaFleur lost them that game, but I think Aaron Rodgers is going to want to run it back. Remember, how did he respond? Remember, they went out and they drafted Jordan Love, who was supposed to be his replacement. They said Aaron can't do it no more. What did Aaron go out and do? Pretty much won the MVP, got them home field, and almost got them to the Super Bowl. Right. I think they go out, they could draft another piece, give Aaron something to work with besides Devontae Adams. And I think they're back in this exact same situation next year with Aaron as their quarterback. I don't think Aaron played his last game. No way.
Yeah,
He's got a lot to prove.
Yeah, I agree with you. But I think he's definitely going to be back next year for the Packers, and he's going to be starting. But I do think when it comes to Aaron Rodgers and his potential divorce with the Packers and Jordan Love taking over, it's a matter of when. Like, it's a matter of time when that's going to happen. I think next year likely is going to be his last year in Green Bay, because the bottom line is you don't draft a guy in the first round. You don't trade up to draft a quarterback in the first round if you're not going to play him in at least his first 2 years in the league. We found that out with Lamar Jackson when Joe Flacco was a starter. We found that out with Alex Smith, Pat Mahomes when Alex Smith was there. Especially now, this is a young man's league.
How many years did Aaron sit behind Brett Favre?
Like 5, but but it's a different league now. It's a different league now. That was back when, you could do that. Back when you could develop quarterbacks. Now, like you got to pay them. You got to pay them. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to depend on two things. One, if Aaron at some point, we're not wishing this obviously, if he gets hurt and Love takes over and does well, I think that's going to basically do the decision for them. And I think at the end of the year, they're going to start taking trade offers for him. I think that it's just a matter of time before they divorce themselves. That's not what I'm saying they should do. I don't think they should have drafted Jordan Love last year in the first place because, one, I don't think he's, he could be the guy. He could be the guy, but did you really need to take him where you did, when you did, in the situation that you guys were in? I don't think so. I think anyone would agree with me on that. But, hey, they picked him that high, though, for a reason. And they have to see something in him to want to get him that high, and especially while they just have a freshly signed Aaron Rodgers already on the roster. They had to have seen something that they liked. And when here's the thing, when coaches see something that they like, when Andy Reid saw Pat Mahomes throw the fuck out of a football, he said, "That's my guy. I love Alex Smith. He's gonna start. He had his best season, but next year, that's my guy. Bye-bye, Alex Smith." John Harbaugh, same thing. He saw Lamar Jackson throw. He saw Lamar Jackson run. He saw his ability. He saw how smart he was as far as understanding the game of football. And he said, "I love Joe Flacco, but going forward, we're going to change the NFL with Lamar Jackson, and Lamar Jackson is my guy." And I think with LaFleur, it's going to be a very similar thing. And again, Aaron Rodgers could go out there and he could win the MVP. And I still think, because coaches love to justify their bad decisions too, this is an ego-driven league, I still think they're going to go and get rid of Aaron Rodgers. And they shouldn't. They shouldn't have drafted Love that high in the first place, but alas, that's where they are. Now, as far as the decision to not go for the touchdown at the end of the game, at the end of the NFC Championship game, I think that, you have to look at it from the perspective of where you're at in the game. Tom Brady's been torching your secondary the entire game, for most of the game. Granted, in the third quarter, he had 3 picks, but, for a majority of the game, he's been doing very well. There's over 2 minutes left in the game. It's 4th and goal. You guys are about 5 yards out. So my thing is, you can take the field goal and then hope that you get it and hope that you get it back, right? Which they didn't. But my thing is, why not go for if you're that confident in your defense, why not go for the touchdown? If you don't even get the 2-point conversion, it's fine, because if you have that confidence in your defense, you'll get the ball back anyway, because you still have 2 times.
Yes.
Yeah, you still have the 3 timeouts. You still have the 2-minute warning. And on top of that, even if you don't get the touchdown, Tom Brady is backed up in his own end zone. And we've seen Tom Brady backed up in his own end zone in the postseason. You've witnessed it. You've seen what he can do.
Throw a pick 6.
And you do, and that's the other thing. When you can give, when it's at your own 5, there's only so much you can do if you're Tampa Bay. It restricts them even more. So I think I would have gone for it, especially when Aaron Rodgers had a wide open touchdown. Actually, just if he ran it in, that wouldn't have mattered. But I think I would trust the offense a lot more than I trust the defense, because I'm betting on Aaron Rodgers making a play, even if I don't get the 2-point conversion. It's fine, because if I'm that confident in my defense will stop the Buccaneers. I'll get it back in time to give one of the most skilled quarterbacks in NFL history a chance to drive us down, to have one of the most clutch kickers in NFL history, in Mason Crosby, kick a winning field goal. I understand the whole thing of, take the points, but to me it just seems like their defense, one, isn't as talented as I think they think it is. But it's also just, I think it's an old school kind of mentality, and it just doesn't work. Like you were talking about the NBA, how, the type of centers like Shaq or like Rudy Gobert. 15 years ago, Rudy Gobert would have been in the MVP conversation for what he was doing a few seasons ago. But the problem is the game has changed. You got it's a shooting league. If you can't shoot and you're a center, there's not a lot of room for you in the league. Nikola Jokic had to learn how to shoot a little bit in the mid-range, in order to become as big as he has. We've seen it throughout. So I think that I think that this is stemming from this idea that, take the points. It stems from this idea of an old school mentality that, you got to be conservative when the league is just becoming more and more reckless and more risk taking as we go on.
Yeah, especially in today's game, dude. I mean, we've seen the rules are so catered towards the offense now that you almost like you got to go for it. Like you can't put too much emphasis, too much faith in your defense to try to get you the ball back. Like you can put faith in your defense to get that ball back, but ultimately if you don't get it back, it's like, especially a quarterback like Tom, dude, a quarterback like Tom who's done it so many times. I said it, dude. We've said it. Playoff Tom is a different animal. And you don't take the points against playoff Tom. You go for it against playoff Tom. Because if it works, kudos. If it doesn't, like you said, he's backed up in his own end zone. You make him work harder to get the ball up the field.
Just why give him the space to work? Why give him the space to work? It didn't make sense to me. It doesn't.
I've seen Vrabel do this. I watched Vrabel do this too many times this season. Vrabel did it in the fucking wild card game against the Ravens. Like to this day, people are like, "Why the fuck? You're like 4th and 2. You're the most dominant running back in the NFL. Why are you punting the ball?" I don't know. The conservative, it annoys the hell out of me. It annoys the hell out of me.
It makes no sense. Like it just doesn't make any sense. What does make sense though is liking this video, sharing and subscribing if you haven't already, and hitting that notification bell. I know I've been plugging it all day. I will continue to plug it as I make the transition to the next topic. Andrew, the AFC Championship game. You were riding high on Bills Mafia. And unfortunately, they didn't come in clutch for you. They didn't come in clutch for themselves. But the Bills had an amazing run. But they ran into a brick wall in the Kansas City Chiefs and Pat Mahomes, who balled out. The Bills lost this game. Chiefs on their way to their second consecutive Super Bowl. Pat Mahomes on his way to his second consecutive Super Bowl. And, it's got a lot of people talking. Tony Romo mentioned on the broadcast that if Pat Mahomes retired after this season, he would be a Hall of Famer. He got a little bit of pushback from, people on Twitter and whatnot, but I think there is a case to be made about Pat Mahomes and his sheer dominance, not just this year, but in perspective to, people around him and his skill level. I've said multiple times on this very show that Pat Mahomes is by far the most skilled quarterback I've ever seen. No one has his ability to analyze defenses, to throw the ball from every single angle, to deliver the ball with the velocity that he can, to throw the ball as far as he can, to, run the ball if he needs to and run and make plays. It's unmatched if you look at it. Even Aaron Rodgers, who, before I thought he was the most skilled guy to ever come out, and he's still like at his same level of skill, I think, that he was in his prime. But Mahomes is just a totally different animal. So, that begs the question, Andrew, if Pat Mahomes, do you think that Pat Mahomes, one, is he the most skilled player to ever play the quarterback position? And two, do you think he ends up being the best to ever do it when it's all said and done?
Skilled. I think he's very gifted. I think he has a lot. Very strong arm. He can get outside the pocket. He can, run it if he has to. He can do all that stuff. He can throw it on the run. He's a very good. He's an elite quarterback. Probably one of the best in the game today. The second question though, he's gotta do a little bit more before, because the guy he's gonna be playing against, not this Sunday, but the Sunday after on Super Bowl Sunday, that dude is playing in his 10th Super Bowl. And he's won how many already? And let's be honest, if that man, Mr. Brady, wins another one against Mahomes, it does change this argument a little bit, doesn't it? It was like not only could he not remember, because they faced off in that AFC Championship game a couple of years ago, when a very controversial ending to that game. But if Tom goes in there at 43 and he beats young Mahomes and young Mahomes' prime, it's like, you got to beg the question. Like, then you have to start asking, what does Mahomes do throughout his career to catch that? Like, does Mahomes essentially
make the Super Bowl every year would be nice. I think he's on track to do it.
He's got to make it every damn year, and he's pretty much got to win it every damn year. Now that's if he win. That's if he loses. Not this Sunday, the Sunday after. That's if he loses. If he wins, though, I still think he's got to make more Super Bowls. Obviously, Tom's won how many MVPs?
I think Pat Mahomes. I think he'll have the MVP comparison on lock as far as that goes. I think he'll be fine in that category.
At that point, it just becomes success in the playoffs. At that point, it just becomes. Remember, Mahomes is in his 4th year already. It's just going to become success in the playoffs at that point. You just gotta at the end put his stats next to Tom's stats, like wins in the playoffs, yards, all that stuff, and that's the only way I think. Because right now, in order to be considered the greatest to ever do it, Tom is the greatest to ever do it. It's without a doubt.
Right.
I mean, this dude, he's the greatest to ever do it. The fact that he took Tampa Bay, this team didn't make the playoffs last year. They're in the Super Bowl this year. I mean, enough is that's all you got to know. Mahomes has to make the playoffs every damn year. He's got to win 7 Super Bowls and just dominate for an extended, like a long period of time, the way Tom has done it. And Mahomes has done so far. He's dominated, but it'll be interesting to see because don't forget, I don't think they're going to have to start making decisions on some of these players that they got. Don't forget, either Tyreek Hill doesn't finish his career in Kansas City, either Kelsey doesn't finish his career in Kansas City. They got Hardman, they got Watkins. One of those guys is not finishing their career in Kansas City. So they're going to have to replace some of those dudes, and we're going to see what happens when he does replace those dudes. Or if the game shifts and people figure out, guys start catching on to Andy Reid, and if guys start figuring out Mahomes a little bit. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of ifs. To answer the question, though, he's got to make the playoffs every year, and he's got to have the dominance for an extended, a long period of time, the way Tom has had it, where it's either AFC Championship or Super Bowl every year, every other year like that, but playoffs every damn year.
I think Mahomes definitely has the talent to do it. I think regardless if he has Tyreek Hill to throw the ball to or Nicole Hardman or whoever, I think he's gonna be doing it. And the only thing I will say is I think Mahomes will have an edge as far as even if he doesn't win 6 Super Bowls like Brady. Let's say he wins like 4, right? If, like you said, he makes the playoffs like almost every single year and wins 4 Super Bowls, I think by the time it's said and done, Mahomes, if he plays if he plays a long career, he'll have every record in the book. He'll have and we'll have seen some of the greatest moments in the history of football because of Pat Mahomes, because he's already given us so many great moments. And I think that he's that type of player. He's literally, I think he's going to be the player to define this entire generation. And much like Tom Brady was in the previous generation, much like, I think you want to say like John Elway was before that, Joe Montana, Johnny Unitas before that, I think Pat Mahomes is that guy. And it's based sheerly off of his ability to throw the football. He literally, I've been burned so many times as a Ravens fan of him just throwing no-look touchdowns like 40 yards downfield while he's getting chased to his left. The dude is insane, okay? I think that if that talent, if nothing happens to hinder that talent and that ability, I think that ability alone will, 1, get him into the Hall of Fame, and 2, if he wins like 4 Super Bowls, I think that's going to make up a lot of the gap between him and Brady, because the thing about Brady is, while we all accept that he's great, I think that the knock on him has always been, he's obviously a great player and he has great skill, but he doesn't have Pat Mahomes level of skill. Let's be honest. And usually on a lot of his runs, he was surrounded by, a lot very good teammates, very good defense early on, especially because a lot of that was on the defense. A lot of that was on some of the receivers they had, and Corey Dillon as well. So I think that there is a case to be made that Pat Mahomes, just based off of sheer talent, could make up a little bit of that gap. Now, that being said, I do think Pat Mahomes ends up winning like 6 Super Bowls. I genuinely believe that. I think the Chiefs, the way they're built, like for the next at least 3-4 years, I think they're going to go on a run that it's going to be like literally unparalleled. I think they're going to run through the entire NFL for the next few years. And as a Ravens fan, it scares me to say that, but if they don't figure out a way, like you said, to figure out Andy Reid's offense, which is hard enough to do, I think that the Chiefs' success is sustainable because unlike a Lamar Jackson, right? In Lamar Jackson's case, you figure out the running game, it's over. You stop the running game, the game's over at this point. With the Tennessee Titans, you shut down Derrick Henry. It's really hard for the Titans to win the game past the ball. You know that. You can say that about a lot of the other teams in the AFC. AFC, they shut down the passing game for the Bills. It's done, right? But the thing is how. And I'm not sure that teams have gotten anywhere close to actually figuring out how to shut that team down because they only lost one game this year, and it was to Oakland. They ended up getting that win back, and that was a close game anyway. So I'm not sure that they can that it's like that easy to figure out that Andy Reid offense. So
I just think just based off of what I've seen, and even Tony Romo, I think Tony was it Romo? Who was the was it Romo and Jim Nantz were the commentators of the AFC Championship game, right? I think I'm drawing a blank. I think Romo he alluded to this, and I alluded to this last year because I hated watching us in the AFC Championship game last year just get torched by Mahomes, but you can't drop back in zone. You can't drop back in zone against them just because they have too many weapons. You almost gotta play the man, and you gotta put hands on them from the line of scrimmage, and you have to get at Mahomes. It's one of those things where to stop them, you just gotta have studs. You just gotta have studs at everywhere on the defensive side of the ball, and you gotta get at Mahomes. That's why I think the Super Bowl is going to be interesting because they do got some studs. They have a lot of studs on the defensive side of the football. Like I know a lot of people are like, Brady turned this team around. Brady turned on Tampa Bay. Don't get me wrong. Brady did go in there and change the culture, and he definitely elevated a lot of those guys, not just on the offense, but on the defense too. They get those extra reps in practice going up against Brady, one of the best to ever do it. But those guys are not exactly scrubs down there. Like right. Murphy Bunting and Ndamukong Suh, Devin White, those guys are not, they are not scrubs in the slightest. So that's what it takes though. I think that's what it's going to take, honestly, to slow down Kansas City in the years coming up is you got to have a pass rush, and you just got to have dudes that can line up with you got to have a dude that can line up at the line with Hill, a dude that can line up in front of Kelsey, a dude that can line up, and you got to have dudes in your secondary that can, if one of your dudes gets beat, you got to have ball hawks back there who's like, I got you. So we'll see.
So what you're saying is you need the best players at every single position on defense to beat Pat Mahomes? I mean,
not the best, but borderline. You got to have damn near you got to have about at least 3 or 4 all pros on the defensive side of the ball to even have a chance.
I think it's also worth mentioning Mahomes is, one bad penalty away from them making 3 straight Super Bowls. So, I think he's had one of the best starts to a career since Tom Brady, and that's without question. You could argue his actual start is probably better than Brady's because first season the dude throws 51 touchdowns. Like that doesn't just happen, for any first year starter. That's immaculate type of stuff. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. We'll do a Super Bowl preview going into the Super Bowl week. So be on the lookout for that. And in order to get that video, you would subscribe. Why wouldn't you? Please make sure you subscribe, like this video. Comment your questions in the chat, too. We'll have a segment at the end where we answer any questions. No matter how dumb or stupid you may think they are, answer them. We will. Moving on. Andrew, I want to get your take on something. So there's a brewing controversy in the world of Major League Baseball about the Hall of Fame. Now, there's a 75% threshold for amongst the Hall of Fame voters for a player to reach the Hall of Fame. And there are 3 names that people would say, if you look at their careers in a vacuum and just their stats and their play on the field, they are first ballot, undefined, undeniable Hall of Famers. Those 3 players are Barry Bonds, Mark McGuire, and Curt Schilling. Now, the first 2 we know why they're not in, but the last one you might not know. We'll talk about Bonds and McGuire in a minute, but let's talk about Curt Schilling. So, like I said, Kurt Schilling did not reach that 75% threshold to get into the Hall of Fame. He has one more year of eligibility. He has since said that he doesn't want to be on the ballot. It's not clear if he can remove himself, but he'll likely be voted on next year, and I don't think he'll end up getting in. And Schilling's thing though is it has nothing to do with involvement in steroids. It has nothing to do with involvement with gambling. That was a big thing with Pete Rose back in the day. His thing is his post-retirement antics, as they say. Now, when I say antics, I'm using that term very lightly, but this is somebody who's promoted conspiracy theories about, politics. He's engaged in really racist rhetoric since he's been, out of the MLB. It's about, transgender people against Muslims, against black people, and he's double, triple down on this kind of stuff, and he's just not backing down. And his thing is, I'm going to say what I want, and I'm going to hurt whoever I want, and I don't care what the consequences are, right? And I think that, again, it depends on what you think the Hall of Fame is, right? Whether or not he gets in. If you're one of the people, and I'm not saying you, I'm using the general you. If someone's one of those people who believes that the Hall of Fame is supposed to be just your play on the field, and just based off that, then it's undeniable. Kurt Schilling's in. But I think there's this other aspect to the Hall of Fame, and it has to do with your overall, what you bring to the game and what your legacy is, and like how you present yourself and how you present the game. Because at the end of the day, you're an ambassador for the game when you're at that high level of a player. And Kurt Schilling, unfortunately, has not presented himself in the best way. So the question becomes, do you want to glorify someone who has made these racist views? Someone who's, peddled conspiracy theories that led people to storm the Capitol, to do stuff that are actually demonstrably destructive to society. But, do you want to glorify that? I don't, and I think that's the big reason he's not in. And, I've gone back and forth on this whole idea of what qualifies you to be in the Hall of Fame. But I do think there is some merit to this because, things like that, right? There used to be this wrestler, right? His name was Chris Benoit, and everyone thought he was dude's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's gonna be in the WWE Hall of Fame, right? All that kind of stuff. He was great. And then one weekend of his life, right? He kills his wife, he kills his son, and he kills himself. And what that did was that literally brought so much pressure, so much shame on the wrestling community in those days that it almost led them to break down the entire industry. And it's obviously not to the same level as what Schilling's doing. That's not what I'm trying to say, but I do think that there are parallels in the principles of not having someone like that in the Hall of Fame who kind of brings shame upon the sport. I just wanted to get your thoughts on Schilling.
So I have a different take on this. I know the average fan, a lot of people, they're going to sit there and when they look at Hall of Fame, they think about legacy. They think about, what was this guy known for, off the field and everything like that. And I understand that. My take on the whole thing is, listen, if it's the National Baseball Hall of Fame, just like the NBA Hall of Fame, just like the NFL Hall of Fame, I don't care what you did when you weren't in uniform. All I cared about was what did you do when you were in that uniform representing that team on the field. That's all that matters. So even though Kurt Schilling might have said a bunch of controversial stuff that many people don't agree with, even though he might have incited some stuff, even though he might have supported the storming of the Capitol, which I didn't, my take, I did not support any of it at all. At the end of the day, none of that stuff should factor into a person's character, should not factor into getting into the Hall of Fame, because there are guys, put it this way. If a guy, like Pete Rose, for example, right? Pete Rose gambled and all that stuff. At the end of the day, though, I know people are like, oh, banned from the Hall of Fame, banned from all this stuff. My viewpoint of Pete Rose is this, though. Listen, you ask anybody who played against Pete Rose, is that one of the top 10, top 5, who was one of the greatest players you ever played against? They're going to tell you, listen, he's not in the Hall of Fame, but anyone who played against him will tell you that was a bad motherfucker I played against. You know what I mean?
Right.
So Schilling has the pedigree on the field. It's another one is going to be A-Rod. A lot of people are going to, A-Rod doesn't get in, all this stuff because of the steroids, Barry Bonds, all this stuff. All that matters is what you did. Because if we take people's character, what they did off the field or off the court into this stuff, well, okay. Take a guy like Wilt Chamberlain. Have you heard the speculation that Wilt Chamberlain had relations with over 10,000 women?
Right. Okay. I think
You're going to keep him out of the Hall of Fame because people are going to sit there and they're going to say that's not a role model. That's not a role. You get what I'm saying?
Right. I understand what you're saying. Right. It's like obviously Curt Schilling is like one of the best closing pitchers of all time. You know what he did in 2004. What he did in 2004 was amazing. Right. When the Red Sox won the World Series. Right. But I do think
Arizona. He won in Arizona. He won in Arizona too. 2001 with the Diamondbacks. The point is, we make a lot of this stuff less about it's messed up too, because do you remember for the longest time,
but I think
they were trying to keep Terrell Owens out of the Hall of Fame for stuff that went on off the field.
Oh well, that was obviously, I mean, I think those two though they're different things though, because one thing I think is important to remember is baseball, like all sports, is a community, and when you're representing that community, I think things like hate, especially in a sport like baseball, where you have a large portion of the players coming from overseas, whether it be Dominican Republic, Cuba, or what have you, right? Puerto Rico, or Puerto Rico is part of the U.S., but coming from other places to the United States. When you have people coming from Japan, I think these types of things in sports that are had that type of diversity, they matter, and I'm not going to say I don't have a vote, so it doesn't matter what I say, right? I do think though that Curt Schilling, usually I think this kind of stuff is subjective and it's hard to really gauge, right? Because how do you know what someone who's has said behind closed doors? How do you know someone who's already in the Hall of Fame wasn't a vehement racist? They're definitely racist in the Hall of Fame right now because baseball goes back to the 30s. But I do think that I do see the side that glorifying someone who has these views it would be detrimental to the community of baseball. And again, I mean, look, Schilling, he might actually end up getting in next year because he wasn't that far away. I think he had 70% of the vote, and he only needed 5% more. So I think it's possible that he ends up getting in anyway. Maybe society will have kind of forgotten about the stuff he did, but I think it is I think there is a point though where your actions away from the field do kind of hurt your legacy and what you did on the field. Obviously he didn't kill anybody, he didn't do anything, but I do think having him as a representation of greatness in baseball, it would cause a stir within the community, and it might actually look bad for the baseball community, but we'll leave Schilling at that, I think.
But
keep going.
Real quick, just right before you transition, I just wanted to take this for example, right? We learn, right, when you visit a Hall of Fame, right? You normally will visit a Hall of Fame. You'll look at the members, you'll look at the plaques, you'll look at this guy did this, you're going to look at this guy for his career, he hit 3-something. This pitcher for his career, 1,200 strikeouts. This guy for his career wins. This guy for his career ERA as a pitcher. This guy World Series champion, right? You're gonna look at that. Because we use that stuff to measure greatness when it comes to an athlete, particularly in baseball. We use home runs, hits, ERA, all that stuff factors in to being recognized in baseball, right? So you're going to look 100 years from now or 200 years from now, if the Baseball Hall of Fame is still there, and obviously we're going to have more members and everything like that, okay? You don't think it would almost be like a disgrace to baseball that a guy who did have that kind of stats, is not remembered, that people 100 years from now are not going to know, casuals are not going to know who Curt Schilling was, what he meant, his contribution to World Series teams, his contribution on the field to the game. People are not going to know who he was because they didn't like they didn't like what he did off the field?
I think, like I said, I think it's subjective, but I do think that there comes a certain point that your stuff off the field does affect your legacy, and I think your eligibility to get into a Hall of Fame, which is supposed to be, an illustrious community representing baseball. And
I mean, I don't blame him for wanting to come off the ballot, because every year you don't get in, it's like that's basically the voters just taking a shit on his career and being like, you didn't. To him, that's basically the voters taking a shit on his career and being like, I won how many World Series, I won how many games, this many strikeouts and shit like that, and you're not going to put me in. Like, that's basically them being like, yeah, your career wasn't shit. That's how Kurt Schilling would do it. But
I mean, to be honest, personally, I don't care. Like, Kurt Schilling doesn't get into the Hall of Fame. I don't care if he does. I don't care if he doesn't. It's not going to change my opinion of who Kurt Schilling is as a person. I think, he's a douchebag. I think that, he's, as a person, he's represented himself in like a deplorable way. I think, but again, that's up to the baseball voters. Go ahead.
I never agreed with people utilizing, I never agreed with people utilizing stuff that took place off the field to try to recognize a player. Remember them as a player. Maybe as a human being is one thing. As a player was different. Dude, the woke sports network ESPN. I remember once they were doing a debate, LeBron versus Jordan, and in the LeBron versus Jordan debate, they were throwing in stuff like LeBron's a great father and all this shit. I go, that should have no part in this debate.
Okay, that's different though. That's different though. Like I mentioned the Benoit thing, right? It's not just about what you do on the field. It's also what you've done to the sport of baseball and the light you shine on the sport of baseball. And I'm not saying that Kurt Schilling has done what Benoit did to the WWE. I'm trying to give you the reason as to why. Again, I personally don't care. It doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect how I view baseball or Kurt Schilling. I think, yeah, sure, he was a great player. It does not change the fact when I see Kurt Schilling on TV, I think, he's a bigoted asshole. It's not going to change my view of him. I think, it's subjective. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, whatever. But, let's move on and talk about two other people who were snubbed in the Hall of Fame again for very different reasons. Those are Barry Bonds and Mark McGuire. Both of them two of the best hitters ever. Barry Bonds, arguably the greatest hitter to ever play the game, has the most home runs in history. Bonds obviously has been, very active in saying that he wants to be in the Hall of Fame. He thinks he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. But the big thing looming over McGuire and Bonds is obviously allegations, and in a lot of cases proven allegations of steroid use for the majority of their career. And I know where I stand on this. I do think that there's actual reasons to not have them in the Hall of Fame. I actually feel extremely strongly about not having them in the Hall of Fame because it affected specifically their play on the field. But I know you feel a little different. So why don't you explain your position on this first?
So you mentioned before about how, what it does for the game, a player's contribution for the game. And their contribution to the game was in the late 90s and early 2000s, baseball, their ratings sucked. The game was boring. The Yankees were winning every year. It was like, it didn't matter. The season, much like with the Warriors during that run, the same thing with the Yankees between 1996 and like 2003, basically. And even 2004, it was like, the World Series is pretty much going to be Yankees and then insert team from America or National League here. So baseball was boring. You needed a way to make baseball more fun. And, outside of the Yankees winning, and the Yankee fans enjoyed that a lot, you needed to increase viewership. And how those two right there with the home run race with Barry Bonds and Mark McGuire and those guys, going at it back and forth every single day, 70 home runs in a season, 67 home runs in a season, everything like that changed baseball because now you had people tuning into baseball and they were like, what's going to happen next? Or, who's going to, when the season's over, who's going to finish with the home run record for the season? And it kind of revitalized baseball and it kind of made baseball, more fun for the fans outside of Yankee fans again. Because as I told you before, dude,
Right.
if you go back and you look at that period of time, baseball, their ratings sucked. The ratings sucked because
Right.
it was like I told you before, like when you have any dominant team, it's always people are you're gonna lose viewers. People are gonna tune out. It's gonna be like, you know what? There's no point in watching. We already know what's gonna happen. We're gonna play the whole season, and then come October, the Yankees are gonna win. So it was something like that. And I think these two, their contribution to baseball, because you mentioned what is your contribution to the sport, their contribution by their play on the field made it more enjoyable and more fun for people off the field, and it revitalized baseball and made it more fun for the 29 other fans of for organizations, their fans, to tune in and be like, you know what? Even though I'm going to watch the Yankees win the World Series, I want to watch these two, juiced up, the Incredible Hulk, basically. I want to watch these two dudes hit the ball 600 feet or hit the ball out of the stadium and shit like that. Like, that's my take on that.
So
they helped revive baseball.
Okay, so I disagree with you, and I have 2 points. First, and this kind of goes along with what you said about them bringing eyes to the sport, and I agree with you. Barry Bonds, Mark McGuire, those type of players did bring eyes to the sport, and I think that in itself was a good thing until you take into account what happened right afterwards, Andrew, because as soon as they retired the allegations of steroid use and they became more and more prominent. Even at the end of Barry Bonds' career, it was kind of like an open secret that, the dude was on the juice, right? But I think the thing that I think really eats into your argument is the fact that baseball ratings fell for a reason. You can argue that one of the reasons was, okay, yeah, the talent wasn't there, but like they fell afterwards, after Barry Bonds and McGuire left, for a reason. You can say that it was because Bonds and them weren't there because there wasn't the same type of domination. But I argue it was because of the steroid use, because people realized what they were seeing wasn't real. With all the dominance that they seen out of all these players, because it wasn't just A-Rod, or it wasn't just Barry Bonds, it was people like A-Rod, people like McGuire. These guys were juiced up and putting up their numbers that are insane. And you have people like Ken Griffey Jr., who played his entire career clean as a fucking whistle, didn't do anything. And
honestly, if that man took steroids, dude, that man might have broke 1,000 because he probably never would have gotten hurt.
Yeah, he never would have gotten hurt. But I think what eats at your point is the fact that the reason people left. I think was in part because they realized, oh my God, these guys are all cheating, and there was a huge stigma. You forget there was amongst fans too. There was a big stigma against people using steroids. To this day, there remains amongst a lot of baseball fans. If you look at polling, there is a lot of stigma against players on the juice. And it affected the way they viewed Barry Bonds. It's affected the way they viewed McGuire. And I think ratings fell potentially for that reason, because they realized what they were seeing was a fake. Now, it wasn't real. Point 2 that I want to make, and then you can rebut everything, right? Point 2 I want to make is they were cheating. It was against the rules what they were doing their entire career. They shouldn't have been eligible to play all those games because they were juiced up. And I think that inflating your numbers and giving yourself a competitive edge when you have a lot of other players, like I said, mentioned, Ken Griffey was one of them, who aren't doing that and are playing by the rules, I think that is detrimental to the game, detrimental to your legacy. And it affects your legacy because it directly affects the way you play on the field. And we talked about in the Kurt Schilling scenario that, it's at the end of the day for you, it's about play on the field, right? And Barry Bonds, he hit the most home runs in the history of baseball. But you know what? There are still a lot of people out there who believe Hank Aaron is the true holder of that all-time home run record, because they don't recognize what Barry Bonds did as legitimate because of everything surrounding it, because of the steroid use, because of the fact that you can tell his numbers were inflated when he started going on the juice. Because when he went to San Francisco, like his on base percentage got higher, his hitting percentage got higher, all those things got higher, and he was an all around better player. Now, I think to this day he'll argue that it had nothing to do with steroid use. He just became a better player, but everyone knows he was on the juice. It's proven, and I think that that is a reason why he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. Him and McGuire specifically shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame because they went against the rules of baseball. They gave themselves a competitive advantage for a lot of their career and the most successful parts of their career, and that should disqualify them.
I understand what you're saying, but in terms of the first point you made initially with the Curt Schilling thing, which was, your contribution, what is your contribution as an ambassador to baseball? Yes, even though what they did,
the contribution was cheating.
On the field might not have been, like, the product might not have been real. The fact of the matter is, they went up there, they still hit those home runs. They still had to go up there and swing the bat, dude. Listen, you could take steroids. Steroids make you stronger, dude. You still got to go up there and you still got to hit that damn ball. I've seen guys on steroids that, even though they hit the home runs, dude, they still struck out. They still made outs. They still flew out, grounded out, popped out, all that stuff. So even though steroids might have changed, how far they could hit the baseball.
They did.
It did.
Andrew, hitting the baseball farther, is actually gives you such an advantage. Okay, you can say that, right? Like, okay, and Andrew,
if the fence is 305 feet, whether you hit the ball 500 feet or 306 feet, it's still a home run.
Andrew,
yes or no?
Yeah, sure, but there's no guarantee that they would have done either. Regardless, Andrew. That's not the point, though. Like,
Skinny Barry Bonds hit home runs.
I can say that the Astros didn't cheat with their whole scandal too. I can use that same logic and say, well, if the Astros didn't have the ability to hit far enough, they wouldn't have been able. People wouldn't call it cheating, right?
Well, no, that's different. No.
Obviously you know what's coming.
What pitch is coming?
Right, but Andrew, when you're stronger because of these advantages that other players don't have. That other players don't have access to and are against the game and other players aren't doing, and you're giving yourself a competitive advantage, that does stay in the sport. It's the reason why, even to this day, no matter what sport you're in, whether it's the NFL, the NBA, the Olympics, or even wrestling, steroid use is still a taboo, and it is not accepted anymore. And it's because it gives you a competitive advantage. It does make you stronger. And whether you want to argue, they still have to know, they still have to they still have to count the pitch or whatever. Like they still have to hit the ball. The fact that they're able to hit the ball farther and they're able to hit the ball with more strength, that still affects the game. That affects their play on the field, Andrew. And that's what I'm trying to say. My point is, I see it as it directly affected what happened on the field, and it affected their numbers specifically. And and I agree with you I'll say this. It was less outcome driven than what the Astros did. And I think we both agree on that. What the Astros did was, they knew what was coming. So the outcomes were automatically in their favor. But just because they didn't cheat as much or they didn't know what was coming doesn't mean what they did wasn't cheating. I to this day, I still think what they did was cheating. And I think after the fact, you saw a lot of fans, hate on, like they dislike baseball. There was a large dislike of baseball, and what happened there? It was just because ESPN ran with it, and they made it a controversy because all the major sports networks ran with it, made it a controversy, and the fans thought it was controversial as well, and they didn't like it. That's the reason why baseball has had to crack down recently. And
listen, regardless of whether those guys juiced, you got to look at it this way too, man. Barry Bonds played how many years? Barry Bonds might be the home run king. I think Barry Bonds would trade all those home runs for a World Series ring. Mark McGuire, I think he'd trade all those home runs for a World Series ring.
Oh yeah.
So when you think about it, when you put it in that regards, it was like, they didn't have the team success. So even though they had the individual success, Curt Schilling is a prime example. Curt Schilling he wasn't on the juice. Curt Schilling won World Series with multiple organizations.
Right.
And he didn't juice up. So it was more or less, maybe it was a trade-off. Maybe it was, these guys chose to take steroids. These guys chose to, pat their stats, bolster their numbers and everything like that. But at the end of the day, they're all playing for one common goal, and it's to hoist that trophy in October. Neither of them got to do it. I know Barry Bonds got to the World Series. He didn't win it. Mark McGuire, I don't think Mark McGuire ever played in a World Series, so he didn't win it.
Nope.
So even though they juiced up and they hit all those home runs, ultimately, what did it lead to? It really didn't lead to much.
Last thing, do they get in? Do either of them ever get in?
No, they're not getting in. Just with the way now, I think they should, but my opinion doesn't mean nothing. You know what I'm saying? My opinion doesn't mean shit. But I think they should get in. Are they going to get in? No, because the like you were saying, dude, the public is going to be outraged if you let the guys like this in, which I think is messed up. That these guys, I think it's justified these guys don't get in because even though their contribution on the field, maybe it was tampered with because of what they, the juicing and everything like that. Kurt, though, come on.
Okay. Well, we'll leave that there. Moving on, last official topic of today. Andrew, your Mets are making big moves. The Mets traded Steven Matz to the Blue Jays in a trade, and there's been a big push to potentially get Trevor Bauer. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
So, Steven Matz, he will be missed, Long Island native. He will be missed. He was vital part of our World Series run in 2015. Did not have as great of a season the last couple of years. So, I wish him the best in Toronto, but Trevor Bauer is one of the best pitchers in baseball. I am so behind this push for Trevor Bauer. Like I have been behind the push for Trevor Bauer ever since we made the trade for Francisco Lindor to bring in a superstar like that. My next thing was, hey, listen, I think Bauer just won the Cy Young too. It was like, listen, we had the back-to-back Cy Young the last 2 seasons with DeGrom. We got guys with World Series. All of them have World Series experience, by the way, even though none of them have won it. Carrasco has World Series experience. DeGrom was on the team that went to the World Series. Syndergaard's on the team that went to the World Series. I think the only one that doesn't have World Series experience but has playoff experience is Stroman. So adding a guy like this after just coming off a season where he was pretty much the only pitcher in the Cincinnati Reds rotation that was, worth something, and they went to the playoffs. It's like, add that to a team that already is building. And Cohen made it abundantly clear, I think Cohen said yesterday or the day before, if he does not win a World Series within 3 to 5 years, then I think he actually said he might sell the team. If he does not win a World Series soon, all of this will have been a waste, he basically said. So I am all for us bringing in Trevor Bauer, bolstering our rotation, and Steven Matz. It was fun while it lasted. You got to enjoy the ride just like all of us fans did in 2015. But moving on to bigger and better things. We wish you the best in Toronto. So there's that.
Steve Cohen's gonna have to get the money to actually sign Bauer, and what's happening this week, I don't know if he'll have the funds to actually make that happen with all that.
I think that's why Matz was on the move. He needs money.
You think so?
He needs money.
So?
Yeah.
I think he sees that Friday deadline coming with GameStop. I mean, hey. We won't talk about it in depth. All I will say.
I'm not talking about that.
All I will say is, don't take out 140% position on shorts, and this might not happen. But
this is a Mets thing too, dude. The Wilpons lost money with Madoff. Now this dude's losing money with GameStop. This is just a Mets thing. Like it doesn't matter who the owner is. This is just a Mets thing. I think it's them.
Dude, I swear, your team, the Mets. I told you this. I think you guys just literally need to change the name. You need to change the colors, and you need to move to another part of New York. I don't think it's gonna happen while y'all are in Queens. I don't think it's gonna happen while y'all are called the Mets. Might need to bring back the old the Brooklyn Dodgers, as Bernie Sanders would say. It's a really bad Bernie impersonation, but I think you guys got to do something because obviously I think there's just a bad aura about this team, about this organization. You know what I'm saying? It's still there.
We thought bringing in Stevie Boy was gonna be he's doing the same shit the Madoffs did.
Dude, I mean, hey, that's what happens, bro. That's what happens when people are.
At least he was willing to spend money, though. The Madoffs didn't spend money. Well, I don't know. The Madoffs didn't spend money after they lost the money. The Mets would spend money before Madoff. Before Madoff, the Mets were spending money.
He had the money to spend. He had the money to spend on Bauer. He had the money to spend on all these guys. It's just. I don't know why he would risk it. That's the only thing. I don't know why he would risk it, but we'll see what happens with that. Anyway, for those of you who haven't already, thank you guys for staying with us. We've got some more final takes to go to, but before we get to that, be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. Also, be sure to check us out on patreon.com/Real Take Sports. We got, starting at $2 a month, you get free premium content included with that membership. We got us reacting to stuff. We got us breaking down, specific stuff we don't talk about on the air. So be sure to check that out for as little as $2 a month. You can become a member, and there's other tiers as well that involve other things. So be sure to check that out. Patreon.com/Real Take Sports. Andrew, yeah, you got any final takes this week? Anything that's on your mind about sports that you want to get off your chest? Now's the perfect moment to do it.
Yeah. We're going to see this dude in the Super Bowl. He's a multiple-time All-Pro, multiple-time Pro Bowler. This dude is shorter than me, but might be one of the fastest men on the planet for his height. And I am going to be honest with you. I do not like this man in the slightest. Whenever he does something big, Twitter explodes. And though he does do some pretty cool stuff on the football field, I think some of the praise that he gets is very, very, very out there. I think, we kind of overhype some of the stuff that this guy does.
There's only two people you're talking about, and it's not the person that I think people think it is.
Yeah, we overhype this dude. And listen, all right, I'm just going to set the record clear because I think people need to hear this. Whoever listens to this needs to hear this. All right. Whenever Tyreek Hill breaks off and he runs for a fucking 80-yard touchdown and he outruns something, and I go on to Twitter and I say, he's a freak. He's this, he's this, he's this. Listen. Okay. Calvin Johnson was a freak. Calvin Johnson was made in the lab. Tyreek Hill, for all intents and purposes, is Chris Johnson in the slot with a competent coach and an actual quarterback. I'm just going to leave it at that. So before everybody goes off on the Tyreek Hill is the greatest wide receiver ever, Tyreek Hill is one of the best to ever do it, Tyreek Hill is no. He's not Calvin Johnson. Don't get it twisted. He's good. He's good for Kansas City. Put him on the Jets. Put him on the 0-16 Lions. They still don't win a game. Okay? So I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay?
I think anyone in their right mind would have thought you were talking about Antonio Brown, but you definitely went the opposite direction. What I will say is I don't think that Tyreek Hill is the best wide receiver in the league. I think he's one of the best. I would definitely say he's better than one Michael Thomas, but we can debate that another day. But with Tyreek Hill, I think what you failed to mention, though, was his ability to go up and get the ball. For someone who is, on the very shorter side. He has the ability to jump up and get the ball over people. No, it's true. It's true.
In single coverage or triple coverage?
Triple coverage, bro. I've seen it. Like, I'll pull up some plays that he had against the Ravens. And those are against like all pro cornerbacks. I can pull it up. We might actually get flagged on YouTube, but I'm willing to do it. But look, I'm serious. I think that is an ability that you underrate on him. And again, I think it's also like this thing of he doesn't need to be Calvin because he's got a totally different skill set. And if there are people who are saying he's one of the best receivers of all time, he's like up there with Calvin, I don't agree. I think that's wrong. But I also don't think he's as bad as you think he is. I think this is part of like your like kind of like to be fair, you do have a little bit of a side. Like if you don't like a player, if he rubs you the wrong way, you tend to kind of write him off. Just a little bit.
I mean, I don't listen. I don't think he's bad. I think, he's very difficult to stay in front of. If he gets a step on you at the line, it's over. He's gone.
Yeah.
But I mean, dude, some of the stuff that like, and these are like verified people. These are, I see people talking about, Tyreek Hill is just different. I get it. He's fast. He's got burner speed. He's a Ferrari. He's probably the best Ferrari you could get on the market. Like he's got a fucking V12 engine in that bitch.
Right.
But let's be very clear. Let's be very clear. Okay. Are the Chiefs? Let's say you take Tyreek Hill out and you put Calvin Johnson in. Are the Chiefs better?
Yeah.
There you go. That's
okay.
mine.
Yeah,
okay.
if that's the point you were trying to make, then I agree. I think anyone in their right mind would agree. I think the Chiefs, Calvin Johnson is the most skilled wide receiver to ever play the position. I think that's definitely an improvement. If that's what you're trying to say, if that's all you're trying to say, I agree. I still think though Tyreek Hill is a much better all around receiver than Michael Thomas. If you're asking me if I would have Michael Thomas on a team or Tyreek Hill, I'm definitely picking Tyreek Hill. Yeah, because Michael Thomas.
I'm comparing the guy who never won a playoff game.
Okay.
I'm comparing the guy. Yeah.
Tyreek Hill's also on a better team and a better organization.
That's what I'm saying. Honestly, I compare and this is when people want to bring up Tyreek Hill like that. Listen, he's Chris Johnson, except he's in the slot with a competent coach and an actual quarterback.
Yeah.
That's what Tyreek Hill is basically.
Okay. Yeah. If I think that's high praise. I think that's high praise. Yeah. But yeah. Anything else? Pro Bowls this weekend. I don't think there's gonna be a game. I think it's gonna be like dude. It's like, dude. Okay, can we quickly just talk about like our reforms for the Pro Bowl? Because you and I have talked about this like for a while now, like ways we would actually fix the Pro Bowl. And, like, it's really easy. Like, it's actually, like, really fucking simple to fix the Pro Bowl. Like, nix the game, okay? Or if you want to, make it, like, flag football because that's what it is anyway. I don't know. Like there's no reason to have contact, honestly. There's literally no reason to have contact.
Make it a touch game. Just make it a touch game.
Yeah, but, like, dude, it's literally what the NBA All-Star game is at this point. It's all, like, there's fucking around until the fourth quarter. Like, make it that. Make it, like, make it something like that. But okay, forget the game. But like the skills competition. Okay, let's focus on this because I remember back in the day, like I don't know if you remember on ESPN, they used to have like the college skills competitions, and those were really dope because you wouldn't see like quarterbacks hitting like bullshit targets like moving targets. I mean, you would see that, but like they were actually like they were actually like better than the ones we're seeing. Like now it's all like it's all spectacle. But what I want to see is I kind of want to see like how the NBA has their thing. You know how, like, the NBA, you don't necessarily need to be an all-star to be in, the three-point competition or stuff like that, right? Like, or the slam dunk competition. I think that, Christian, we'll get to your question in a second. I think that in order to fix the Pro Bowl, you'd kind of go that same route. We want to find out who has the biggest arm in the NFL. Bring the quarterbacks that we know, like, have the biggest arms in the NFL. And, like, there's a few of them out there. Like, we know Rodgers. We know Mahomes. We know Josh Allen. I'm going to put Stafford and Flacco in there as well, even though Flacco...
Stafford can sling that shit,
yeah,
Stafford can sling that shit submarine, dude.
Dude, but yeah, no, Flacco too. I think Flacco's in there as well. But I think that we want to know who has the strongest arm definitively. Make it a thing every year. Make it a thing every year and, like, make it so, like, okay, the winner, like, they get, like, 10 grand or something to their charity of their choosing and, like, something like that. Something to incentivize them actually winning. Because it's not that hard for Rodgers to come out there and be like, oh, I'm going to go to Hawaii and flick a ball. Cool. Like he doesn't have to play in the game, doesn't have to do anything. It's fun. Make it fun for the players and make it interesting for us because I also want to see who has the biggest leg in the NFL. Like that bullshit, like tic-tac-toe they play in the Pro Bowl. I don't care about that. I want to know who's going to go out there and kick a 70-yard field goal. Is it Greg Zuerlein? Is it Justin Tucker? Is it Rob Baronis, even though he's not in the league anymore? Big shout out to Rob Baronis, former Tennessee Titan. We love him out there. But who has it? I want to do same thing with, like, the receivers. Like, I want, like, forget the jugs machine. I want to see Pat Mahomes sling it, like, within 10 yards of you, as hard as he can, see if you can catch it. I want to see your reaction time. I want to see, like, bring some spectacle to it. Bring some fun to it. Like, let's find out who's the best at what and make it like that. Don't make it like these damn, like, dodgeball games that nobody cares about. No one's going to watch a Pro Bowl for a dodgeball game. I want to know. We watch the NBA slam dunk contest to see spectacle, to see who's the best at dunking. We watch the
3-point contest.
3-point contest, see who's the best 3-point shooter. I want to know who has the strongest arm. I want to know who has the strongest leg. You can and you could even make like the field goal thing interesting. You can make kickers great again. Make kickers great again,
dude. You know what?
Dude, make it like the slam dunk contest. Make them do like flips and shit.
make it like the combine too, man. Just make them run 40s and shit. Just take the dudes
that
you think are the fastest dudes. Make it like the combine.
Have Lamar Jackson and Tyreek Hill run the 40 against each other. See.
Remember, we were robbed of Lamar Jackson running that. We don't know what his 40 is because he didn't run at the combine. We're sitting there saying Tyreek Hill's the fastest in the league. Lamar could run a 4.2. We don't even know.
We don't even know. Run at the combine. Don't even know. Okay. Let's get some questions. Christian asks, thoughts on the Blue Jays' future? Andrew, thoughts on the Blue Jays' future?
That's a tough division, dude. The Yankees are the Yankees. The Red Sox are every other year. Toronto is one of those teams where, they'd have to sneak in with a wild card. So I think Toronto's building. Toronto is one of those teams, though, like in basketball, dude, they have to have a core. Toronto, I don't think it really has a direction right now. I think they're definitely trending upward, but it's just, it's hard with the Yankees in that division. Boston's also in that division. Tampa Bay, dude. Tampa Bay was just in the fucking World Series. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not an easy division in the slightest. So I think they're trending upward, but they got a lot of hurdles too. Like it's like Baltimore, dude. It's like every couple years they can be good, but it's like they're one of those teams where they kind of got to hit rock bottom and then build and get back up to that point. So
I would say paying Chris Davis over $100 million is definitely hitting rock bottom for at least a few years.
To go 50 days without a hit. The Chris Davis hitless watch was the funniest shit
that fall from grace. We got to do I think we're gonna do like a real take documentary on that. Actually, yeah, I think I'll make that one of my first projects. I do want to start doing like more documentary type stuff. We'll actually plug that on Patreon too. That would be a good
hysterical.
idea.
The Chris Davis hitless watch. Breaking news, Chris Davis. Dude,
bro,
they stopped whatever program was on. It was like when remember when Rutgers went like 5 consecutive weeks without scoring in the Big Ten? And they were like, it was like breaking news. Like they stopped to get breaking news. Rutgers finally scored.
We're going to give people the 30 for 30s that they didn't know that they needed. Rutgers scoreless streak and Chris Davis hitless streak. Christian also asks, what do y'all think about Scotty Miller saying that he's faster than Tyreek Hill?
I love it. That competitive edge we need in the NFL. You know what? All the more reason why we need to have a combine type thing at the Pro Bowl. He's saying this shit. You know what? He wants to say this shit. Get them out there in Hawaii or get them wherever the damn Pro Bowl is. Have them run 40s. Hook the shit up around them. Have them run 40s. We'll see who the fastest one is. We will see who the fastest one is. Get Lamar Jackson in that bitch too. I want Lamar Jackson in that bitch. I want Hardman in that bitch. I want just all the fastest players in the NFL. Get them in that bitch. You know what? I'm not going to say we should do because there's certain shit I don't think we should do at the we should do. Like, I'm talking who deliver the biggest hit, and then we just have these fuckers just, run into something where this was this amount of force.
Well, they got that machine, right? They got that machine that can like judge how much, how hard you hit. Well, why don't just use that?
I mean, but like a Derrick Henry type thing. It was like just have running backs run into a fucking thing and be like, yeah, you ran into it with this amount of force or something like that. That'd be dope though. Yeah, it's like they would never do that, but that'd be dope.
It's like in Dragon Ball Z. You remember when Goku hit that machine, like when they were doing okay, let's find out which division you're in, and he hit that shit. And it broke.
Yeah.
That's what it's gonna look like when Derrick Henry runs into it.
He walked up to the shit and tapped it. And there were 576 points, and then the one dude goes, you know what, fuck this shit, and he just boom.
That was Vegeta. Remember?
Blew up. The whole thing just blew up. He's like, because
Vegeta's OP, and then he fucked it up for everyone else waiting in line because there were 100 people behind him in line.
My favorite. You had all those fuckers who were one dude was like, yeah, fuck this shit. He goes, that guy would kill me. I'm out. It was this big jacked up fucking 7-foot juice dude. He was like, yeah, fuck this shit. That guy would fucking tear me inside out.
Oh man, yeah.
But yeah, no, I think with him saying that, I love it. You know what? He's calling out Tyreek Hill. I love that competitive edge he's got. You know what? I would love to see it. Have him go to the combine, dude. Have a combine type thing at the Pro Bowl. Hook them up with some shit around their waist and just have them run. And we'll see who the fastest one is.
Hey, I'm down for it. I'm down for that. I'm down for anything other than watching Russell Wilson.
Dude, there are definitely dudes. There are definitely dudes who come into the NFL and definitely get faster. I want to see how much it's you track their progression because remember some of these dudes are 21, 22 years old or something like that. You've seen the way Tyreek Hill works out, dude. Tyreek Hill fucking what is he? Tyreek Hill, he has like the Patrick Beverly workout where like those guys they'll wear like Tim's, a weighted vest or something like that, and fucking like try to do they'll try to do like military workouts on the beach or some shit like that. So it's like like clearly these guys are getting stronger, they're getting faster. See how much faster these guys go from year to year. See like every year have them run and see how much faster each player gets from year to year, how much slower guys get from year to year. I'd like to see it.
Let's do it. Make it happen, Goodell. You have the power. You have all of the power. Make it happen. There's no more questions. I think that's going to pretty much do it for me. Andrew, you got any last minute thing you want to talk about?
No.
No? All right. Well, then I'll go into the last pitch. All right. This has been a Real Take Sports Talk, episode 28. We're going to be coming out with a few more episodes. I got some big plans coming up for the week leading up to Super Bowl. Some top 5 videos should be coming out in the next, sometime in next week, breaking down some of the biggest moments and mishaps of the Super Bowls. Andrew and I are probably going to be back for next week for a live stream to preview the Super Bowl. It's going to be an hour completely dedicated to the big game, completely dedicated to football. The first hour next week, live here on YouTube, completely dedicated to football. Be sure to be here next Thursday, 8 p.m., same time, same place, Real Take Sports Talk. Follow us at Real Take Sports on Twitter, Real Take Sports Talk on Facebook. If you want to listen to the audio version, be sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast today. Be sure to like us, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Follow us on Twitter. That's also on the thing. And, yeah, I got nothing else to plug. Andrew, you got anything to plug?
No. Thank y'all for listening. We support you. We love all of y'all, and we're going to keep putting out content the best that we can for y'all. Love y'all.
Yep, we love y'all. And remember, hey, go GameStop. We'll see you next week, guys. Later.